Hello everyone and welcome to Flower Boys. I am so excited to be here today. We are going to talk about Black queer folks who have shaped our nation, and I am so excited that I flew all the way from Boston to LA to speak with a very special guest today. An activist, an author, a journalist, an icon, George Johnson. George, how you feel today?
Tired.
Look, you've been working hard. You've been working hard. Yeah. You got some big things coming up.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Multiple books.
Okay.
Some stuff in the television and film world. But
Okay.
excited to be here. Tired and excited.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much thank you for making time.
Always.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
I drew a painting back in 2018 called Flower Boys, and so I saw the cover of your book, and I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's a flower boy, and so this is the painting here.
I saw that when I walked in, and I was like, I wonder who made that.
Yeah, this is the painting. Of course, it's much larger, right, in person. However, it's the exact same colors as your book.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. So this was destined. This is amazing. So for you all who do not know George is a non-binary author of several books, but one book in particular is their memoir, All Boys Aren't Blue. An incredible story about themselves that's bringing so much hope to me and hope to people all around the world. And so many folks are also upset about your personal story, right? So much so that the book is banned in multiple states in K through 12 school districts. And it's really disheartening to know that when, us as queer folks tell our stories, that folks have such a troubling time with it. And so, I can define you as an activist, an author, a scholar. Folks are defining you through their vantage point. How do you define George Johnson in this moment?
Yeah, I guess I would define myself as free. Like, I'm free to tell my story, to tell the stories of our ancestors. Free in the sense that I like to work on abolishing the structures and the confines that dictate that I can't fully be my most authentic self at all times. Right. Freedom is a conscious struggle, which is,
it is.
But this is the freest I've ever been to be myself, especially trying to navigate it all in the public eye.
Right.
But yeah, I'm free, and I'm also human. And I think that's the other thing too, is like the larger your profile starts to get, the less human people see you. They start to see you as a thing rather than seeing you as a person. But I still have human things happening every day, just like anyone else.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that's how I would describe myself right now, free and human.
When did you really feel a sense of freedom on this journey?
Yeah, I honestly, it was probably last year at some point. Once I started to get more into like fashion, get more into like makeup and like certain things that I was always afraid to do. I think a lot of politics were playing a role in how I felt I could express myself, or how I felt I could present myself to the world. But then I just finally got to a point where I was like, I have to define me for me. And so, that's what I've been doing since last year, like really like taking a chance on myself. Right. I think what they say is like sitting in the front seat of your own classroom.
Exactly.
And so I've been doing a lot of that type of work to unlearn the confines of desirability politics, not being afraid of like being boxed into people's hatred of effeminate people who look like me. Right. And then like playing myself down because I don't want that type of static with people. It's like I had to really get to a place where it was like, you know what, F them. Like I just gotta live me for me and do me. And so
I'm wondering, so, of course this past year, your book came out in 2020, and you identify as non-binary. So was that a part of that process, or was that something that you've been identifying as for years?
Yeah, I started identifying as non-binary in 2019. It really happened after a conversation with my grandmother before she passed, a couple months before she passed, when we were sitting in the hospital. To sum up the conversation, she just was like, well, you never were really a boy, but you never were really a girl. You just kind of sat somewhere in the middle. She was like, I don't know what that is, but just know that like I've always known that that's what you've been.
Exactly.
And I think that was the moment, because it was like I was so afraid to define me for me, when most important people around me had already been seeing it since I was a kid.
Right.
And I think that was one of her ways of like, before she left this earth, she just needed to validate that part of me so that I could continue on knowing who I was or what I felt inside was also being shown outside. And so yeah, it was 2019 when I decided to really accept my truth of who I am.
I love that. I love that, and I love the supportive family.
Yeah.
When I was reading your book, that was one thing that really stood out to me in my own personal story. So I don't really feel like I came out. But when I was 16, my dad set me down, and he was just like, you know, something isn't right. You hanging with this boy, and he got these skinny jeans on, he got his hair pressed, and, you know, you starting to wear all these colored jeans. It was during like the jerkin, you know, season. And so he asked to like go through my MySpace at that time, and I was just like, no, Dad, you know, you can't see, blah, blah. He was like, I don't care, like, let me see. So I ended up just saying, hey, you know, I like guys, because I knew if he went through my MySpace, he would have saw that. And, you know, from that moment, and my dad passed away in 2019, our relationship had just went downhill. And I do feel like, you know, a lot of queer folks struggle with their families not being accepting of them.
Yeah.
And you had a different journey, at least with some of the members of your family, right?
With most of the members of my family.
Okay.
Yeah, I still talk to my mom and them every day. Even my dad, like, he could be stoic at times, but he texts, he'll call. We have a great relationship.
That's good.
So I was fortunate to grow up in a family that was really, really supportive of queer people, but they always just operated from a place of love first, and then like we could figure out the rest afterwards.
Right.
And it's not that it means every single person in my family, you know, was perfect. But for the most part, I grew up in a home that was loving, affirming, supportive, and caring. And then once I started to define myself as who I was, they were more excited about it, and like they along for the ride. Like they love it. Like they love that I'm so free.
Do you feel like, you know, with that support, it allowed you to show up in the world as yourself more? And how do you balance, you know, and not that it's your responsibility at all, right? But since so many queer folks don't have that experience and so many people look at you for hope, you know, have you gotten that question around like, hey, how do I deal with my family if they're not supportive? And, you know, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I get that question all the time. I get it from students a lot of times. Some of the students become my mentees so that they know that they have somebody in the world if like they can't go to their parents.
Right.
But, you know, I'm also very big on chosen family. And so what I teach is the fact that, like, if the family you got ain't working, like, then, you know, you can choose a different one.
Exactly.
And so I'm very big on chosen family. I have several chosen families. Like, I'm in the house of Comme des Garçons.
Okay.
So my Garçon family is super, super supportive. I'm also a member of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And, like, all of them are super, super supported. And so even though I was blessed to have a beautiful blood family that supported me, it doesn't mean that there are still other aspects of me that get supported differently with the other chosen families that I have. So I'm very, very big on, you know, queer folks having chosen family.
You know, I'm gonna ask you a personal question then. Are you in a relationship? Is that a part of your chosen family at all right now?
I am not in a relationship.
Okay.
I do date.
Okay.
So, you know.
And I'm going to just timestamp this. We're in 2023.
2023. You know, it's tough dating. First of all, like, it's tough dating within our community just because we come with a lot of traumas, right? Like a lot of us have like these traumas from the past that many of us are still working through. But then, you know, in addition to being a public figure, I'm also a public figure who is publicly living with HIV. So there are a lot of other caveats to a person who has the tenacity to really want to engage in a relationship with me because of a lot of those reasons, right? There's still stigma, there's still shame, especially around the HIV part, and me publicly living with it. But then also I have a public profile that's growing, and so it's like everybody ain't built to be a part of a public relationship,
Not at all,
right? Like so that's another caveat to it. But I'm 37 and I'm enjoying life. And so I date and so things are,
Okay, that's good. That's good. You're so brave. You are, like how you tell your story, how you're vulnerable about things that you don't have to be vulnerable about. Where do you think that came from?
My mother is a wonderful public speaker.
Okay.
Like,
I've seen.
Yeah. My mom's a wonderful public speaker. My mom is a survivor of brain surgery, brain aneurysms, as well as breast cancer. And so my mom has always been just a very vocal person within my life. I think a lot of that confidence was just kind of like built in.
Exactly.
Like, because I watched them kind of navigate the world in a way where they were super transparent, super vulnerable, in effort to help other people.
Exactly.
And so I think I just naturally got that. And my grandmother was always a very charitable woman. She had raised like 27 foster kids. She just was that type of person that she would let so many people in to give them a chance. And I think that's where a lot of my vulnerability and transparency comes from.
Yeah, you know, I love that because one of the main reasons that Flower Boy exists is because, you know, so many queer folks, oftentimes even through the face of oppression, we do give back and we do so much for society, even when society doesn't necessarily do much for us or take up for us, right? And so we give out flowers. And so why do you feel so many queer folks are empowered to do that, even though the world is not necessarily giving back to them? I think about folks like Bayard Rustin and James Baldwin. Even in those times, right, in the civil rights time, you know, they were really stepping up, trying to liberate Black folks as a whole when they weren't even accepted themselves.
As people who live at the intersections of oppression, being Black and being queer, I feel like we get to look at the world differently, and we get to view the world differently. And we understand that our liberation oftentimes is tied to the totality of us being liberated. And so we always have operated from a space of liberation looking like something that's a communal thing.
Right.
And even when we're dealing with an inner community who is oppressing us, we still see, like, we understand that they're being oppressed too.
Right.
And that oftentimes, hurt people.
Exactly.
And a group that's oppressed will oppress a group below them so that they can feel the same power that the people who are oppressing them have.
Exactly.
And so I think when it comes to us as Black queer folks, we just have a different lens that we get to look and that we live through the world in. And because of that lens, we get to experience different things that others will never fully understand the totality of. And I think, for me, it's just like I can't see myself not wanting to liberate us or as many of us as possible. That type of work as Black queer people is just something that I think is ingrained in us. It is something that I think because we're more tied to spirit, and we're more tied to self than a lot of other people. A lot of people operate under constructs. We operate from a space of freedom many times. A freedom that many are jealous or envious of when they come from non-queer communities.
Exactly.
But that's why we also understand what liberation can look and feel like, because we have broken some construct that told us we couldn't be this way.
Exactly.
And that's something that many other communities don't understand. And so that's why, because we know what a form of liberation looks like, even from small constructs, it's something that we hope to share with others. And I think that's why we're always looking to try and help others to get that, even if it's just that small bit of liberation from a construct. We know what it feels like to break a construct.
That's so powerful, that, you know, those small pieces of liberation. You know, we're going through so much in our country and our world right now. When I think about the LGBTQ policies that's popping up all over, when I think about the movement for Black liberation, continuing the shift from Black Lives Matter to policing and all these different things, what do you feel like, from your vantage point, is the mandate of our time right now?
The mandate of our time right now. I feel like my current mandate, or the current mandates that I'm operating under, is one, definitely not allowing them to erase our history. I think that's like the biggest thing. Is, you know, this erasure of our history, and like this notion that like we need to move past these things, or like we're post-race society, or we're post-racism, or we're post-homophobia, or we're tired of talking about slavery. Like we'll never be tired of talking about it because we're still dealing with the ramifications of it. And so you don't get to be tired of talking about it until we not dealing with the ramifications of it.
Right.
So I think a lot about that. I mean, policing, like, what in the world? Like, people were so upset with defund the police, and but it's like, and you know, some people were like, well, yeah, like maybe we should just defund some of the. It's like, no, they just don't need to exist. Like it's not working. Whatever that system is that y'all thought was going to protect someone is not protecting anyone.
Right.
Because you can't keep saying crime is rising.
Exactly.
But you need more police. But it seems like the more police you get, the more police brutality we have, and y'all still not stopping crimes, right? So like that can't work, right? And so I also think that's part of the mandate too, right? I can't think of what the term, mutual aid. I think is like, you know, going back to like what a lot of us used to do, right? Like us taking care of us. I think that's really Black people's mandate, I guess is what I was trying to get to with all of this.
I love that, yeah.
A lot of times people want us to take on the labor of other oppressed
and
folks.
We always have.
And we always do, but I think now it's time for us to be a little selfish and really have to worry about us again. And what does mutual aid look like? How do we build our own communities up when the police budgets are so high that the social service budgets aren't helping people, so they're creating poverty, and then most crimes in this country are crimes of poverty. So it's just like a vicious cycle. It's like because you're not putting money into systems that would stop poverty. So then you're creating these things that become crimes. And then on the other side saying you need more police to police the crimes. But the reason that we have poverty is because the budgets for them are already too high and the social service budgets aren't. And so I think we need to get to a place of what does mutual aid look like? What does building within our own communities look like in efforts to really protect our own communities. So I think that's the mandate where we're at right now.
Okay, you know, I love that. And we definitely as a community got to come together. We got to love on each other more, pour into each other more. And I think it goes back to something you said earlier with the trauma. So we have so much trauma in our communities from, you know, of course, the times of slavery to the time of Jim Crow to now, and so many things to unlearn. You know, as we're dealing with all of this trauma and internalized racism, right? Never mind about how do you feel like what we can do. How have you dealt with some of the trauma, like in your life, and been able to come out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, a lot of the traumas that I've dealt with, I've written about, like in an effort to kind of get it out of my system, but also put it out there publicly. I think therapy helps us work through our traumas, but I think naming them, right? I'm a person who is very big on naming things. And so even when my friends say like, yeah, I'm just overwhelmed, I'm like, by what? And they're always like, what do you, I'm like, name the things that are overwhelming you, right? Because I think for us, it's like we have like I know what I've been dealing with, what some of my trauma triggers are and what they're attached to, but I can name them. There are a lot of people that can't name it.
That's true.
And so they lash out or they act out or they perform in a certain way and don't even know why they're performing in a certain way because they've never actually been able to name the trauma. And so I always start there with myself. It was like, name what it is that is bothering you from your past that's creating what this present situation is looking like. And being able to name those things, I've been able to work through those things. Because once you name it, you know what it is, and you can now take active steps to working against it.
Exactly. So you are doing so much. What are you most excited about in this moment?
Sleeping.
Okay.
I enjoy naps.
Okay.
It's funny because Quinta Brunson recently talked about taking naps, and I'm like, yes, it's like, I enjoy naps. No, what I'm really most excited about is the fact that we are in what I like to say is like the second coming of like a Harlem Renaissance. I think we are in like a space of a queer renaissance, and part of being in this space means I don't want the same thing to happen as what happened to our ancestors of the Harlem Renaissance to happen now. I want to make sure we're capturing the moment, which is why I write, and which is why I make sure that when I'm writing, I'm also writing about things that are happening in this moment with Black queer folks. You know, this is the first time like we've had this much visibility and representation as Black queer folks, and you know, while we're also dealing with real world issues of them trying to oppress us through laws, through everything. And so it's important that we're capturing both sides of this. It's important that we're talking about Don't Say Gay bills, and we're talking about book bans, but also important that we're celebrating people like the MJ Rodriguez's and, you know, celebrating Lil Nas X doing, you know, something in a pop space that, you know, we really Sylvester was
exactly.
like, our main reference point for someone who was able to kind of cross genres like that as a Black queer person. And so that's what I'm excited about. The fact that I get to write more books, the fact that I'm doing television and film, the fact that I'm doing some docuseries stuff, the fact that we're even doing this today.
Exactly.
This is stuff that we couldn't do in the past.
Exactly.
And so to be able to just do it and be supported in doing these type of things, I think, watching Black queer creativity on the rise is what I'm most excited about, and being a part of the shift of it culturally.
Anything we should be expecting from you in the near future?
Yeah. My third book, Flamboyance, which is my take on the queer folks from the Harlem Renaissance, the Black queer folks from the Harlem Renaissance, will be out May of 2024. As long as we can stick to our deadlines.
Yes. You will.
I recently signed a 7-figure book deal with my friend Leah Johnson to write a Black queer romantic comedy series. Thank you. Called There's Always Next Year. So that's 2025. So that's a lot of excitement around that.
You booked for the next few years.
I booked for the next few years, writing books for the next few years, and booked for the next few years. Still in development for the television show, working with Gabrielle Union for All Boys Aren't Blue. So hopefully we'll have some exciting news about that soon.
So as you said earlier, you're this public figure. So many people know about your life. I mean, you've written about your life. And of course, folks dig as well. What is something we don't know about you?
Okay. What is something that people don't know about me? That's a good question. Because I tell so much of my tea. I don't know if there's much left to spill. I can cook.
Okay.
A lot of people actually don't know that I can cook. Some of my friends do know I can cook. Right. And can really cook, because my grandmother actually taught me how to cook. So I actually am really, really good.
So basically, I'm coming over for a meal.
Yes. Oh, I guess what people wouldn't know is that Living Single is my favorite show. I watch Living Single all day. I go to sleep to Living Single reruns. Period. I literally, Living Single reruns are on right now on my TV, just playing on Hulu. Living Single is my thing. And I'm a bowler. I'm good at bowling. Very, very good at bowling.
I love that.
I did competitive bowling in high school.
Oh, wow. Okay, you're really good. I was about to say we got to go bowling, but I don't know about that.
Yes, I was a competitive bowler in high school. So,
You've done so much. That's so amazing. Even in your books, you share a lot. Is there something that most folks don't hone in? Even if we think about All Boys Aren't Blue, is there a piece of it that folks don't hone in that you want them to hone in on more?
Yeah, the thing I thought the book was gonna get banned for was the chapter about Abraham Lincoln.
That was
with all the CRT going on. I thought that was going to be the chapter. That also lets me know that people aren't reading the book, because the parts that they're trying to ban are in chapter 11 and I believe in chapter 15. But the parts about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington being slave owners, and Thomas Jefferson being a rapist come up well before you ever get to that. So that's how I know that most of the people trying to ban the book didn't read the book, because they would have been way more upset about that, but they don't even know that's in the book. So I thought more people would be intrigued by that section of the book. But that's not what happened.
It's so crazy that you mentioned that, because I literally told my husband when I was reading, I'm just like, okay, now I see why people are banning the book. Nobody wants to hear about Abraham Lincoln owning slaves, right? And I just imagine, as you were talking about even the hall switching up for Black History, I'm like, folks are upset about that, right? And they're like, we do that at our schools, all of that, but they're not speaking about that.
No, I thought that was going to be the thing, and it did not end up being the thing. The thing ended up being my sexual life, which was it's just weird, but I thought more people were going to talk about that, but
are you anticipating, well, I don't want you to anticipate, but I know that you have, any other of your projects being banned?
We'll see. Signing a large book deal may make them think twice about, because it's not going their way.
Right.
But do I foresee them trying to ban? Yeah, I think they will. It's very clear they just don't want these type of books. No matter about if they're graphic or not. No matter about. It's just there's a queer lead character. No, I don't want my child reading it. That's really all it boils down to. They just don't want to say that.
Right.
So they try and nitpick at other things. within the book that they feel is like indoctrination, when realistically it's like unlearning. Like we're trying to make these kids unlearn the actual indoctrination y'all are putting
Exactly.
through. So.
Have you ever had any electeds or principals call you to just like talk to you about the book and as they're making these decisions around banding?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've definitely talked with school board members. Okay. Tons of school board members. I talk with librarians often. Okay. You know, I haven't, that's the one thing though I'm waiting on, right? Like I haven't actually talked to any elected officials, like senators, or even though the bannings are happening, they haven't reached like that level, like House of Representative levels, like where we have to speak in front of Congress or that, like where it gets called into there. But I do know that it's getting close to that. Sure. And so, if and when it does happen, my team is definitely prepared for me to go speak in front of Congress about it. So I would be I'd be more than delighted to go and speak in front of Congress about it.
You know, and it can come for many different reasons. They can be celebrating you, which they need to, right? Or just so we can start having these conversations more, because they got to step up. Like we can't just continue to band our stories, right? And so they should be stepping up, and I think it's really even a mandate for us to put pressure on our electeds to have these conversations. Yeah. What do you want to be remembered for, George?
That's a very good question. People often ask about, like, what do you want your legacy to be? Or, like, what do you want to be remembered for? You know, I think for me, it's honest. It's simple. Like, that I lived a life. Yeah. Like, that I didn't just exist, that I didn't just succumb to the pressures of society, that I actually made an active choice to live a life, especially as a Black, non-binary, HIV positive, public person, like that I lived a life and did it on the terms that I wanted to do it, you know? And I want that to be the thing I'm remembered for, because I think in saying I lived a life, everything else falls under it. The writing, the television and film, the speaking engagement, it all falls under the fact that I chose and I actively chose to live a life.
I love that, and we are so grateful for the life you're living. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, you know, this project is really to amplify those who are not getting their flowers. And so I want to do something really special. Okay. Got some flowers for you, George, all right? All right, so these are for you, my favorite flowers. Okay. All right, so roses and sunflowers together. Okay. So today, I want to make sure you get your flowers, okay?
Thank you.
All right, so these are for you.
I love it. My Aunt Munch's favorite flower is the sunflower. So,
okay, it's a beautiful flower.
Yes.
So thank you so much for taking the time.
I love flowers.
Okay, okay, that's good.
Yes, I just was telling somebody yesterday, that's my love language.
Okay, so when you heard flower boy, you was like, okay, I got to be a part of that.
Yes.
I love that, I love that. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to what's to come in your life.
Yes, thank you for having me.
The best is yet to come.
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, George.